Hello, welcome to the weekly economic snapshot. The State Demography Office recently released its update of population estimates and forecasts for Colorado and every county in the state. And I'm here with Neal Marquez, the state projections demographer, to talk about their forecasts. Neal, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here, Bill.
So, Neal, what is the outlook for population in El Paso County, and how does that compare with what you're seeing for Colorado and what's being forecast for the U.S. overall?
Yeah, definitely. So El Paso is the largest county in Colorado by population, right? With 1 in every Coloradans residing in El Paso. And even with its large size, historically, El Paso has grown faster than Colorado as a whole and the United States as a whole, contributing to more concentrated population growth in Colorado than what we have seen in the past. And for our population projections, we're expecting El Paso to continue to grow faster than the rest of Colorado and the United States as Colorado grows faster than the rest of the United States. However, at a rate that's slower than what we had observed in the past. And this is a pattern that's consistent with what we're projecting for actually all counties in Colorado, a general trend of continued growth, but slowing growth as the population ages and migration starts to slow down.
Could you give us a brief overview of what goes into making these projections?
Yeah, definitely. I mentioned migration, but I should say that we actually make our projections using a cohort component method. And what this means at a high level is that we don't make projections directly on the population for the population, but rather make projections of births, deaths, and net migration, the only 3 ways that populations can change in size. And we have good demographic theory about how fertility and mortality rates change over time to inform our birth and death projections. And we use an economic labor model to inform our migration projections. In this model, job growth is projected so that we can calculate labor demand, and migration is adjusted to meet that demand. And while these are the main components of our projections, we also consider a number of other factors when we're reviewing our initial projections and whether to make adjustments, such as resource limitations, buildable land, housing productions, and costs, just to name a few.
Okay, and I noticed while you're still projecting pretty strong growth, the projection that came out this year was a little bit slower growth than what you were projecting last year. What changed?
Yeah, this isn't unique to El Paso, actually. The projections for the whole of Colorado are slower this year compared to previous years. There are a few post-2020 data indicators that have become more clear since we made the last projections that we felt we needed to incorporate this year. First, one of the big ones is that fertility rates, the number of births women are expected to have shown no signs of bouncing back to their pre-2020 levels in a way that was thought to happen when COVID first hit. And second, domestic migration to Colorado has slowed considerably post-2020, and we're not expecting a rebound in the near term as job growth is expected to be slow for the state of Colorado over the next few years in El Paso County in addition. El Paso's population growth has, in addition, more recently been sustained by an increase in the international migration population, a pattern that we've seen occur in Denver, Adams, Arapahoe as well. However, this migration is expected to drastically fall off as the economy slows and immigration policy tightens as well.
Are you seeing any shifts in the composition of our population here in El Paso County?
Yeah, in addition to the international migration that we saw, we're expecting aging in the population as well. And this is true for Colorado as a whole, but it's very important for El Paso. El Paso's population is aging, and that will have a lot of consequences, but 2 things that stakeholders should be especially mindful of. First is that the school-age population is currently in decline and is expected to continue decline through the decade. And eventually, we expect this population to start to rebound as migration drives up births and school enrollments, but this isn't expected to happen until well into the 2040s. Second, retirement age population is expected to grow faster than any of the younger age populations. Now, retirement age populations generally have a greater reliance on social services and other groups, and accelerated growth in this group relative to the population as a whole are likely to are likely to produce budgetary pressures because of the utilization of those social services. At the same time, people are retiring at later ages, and leveraging the experience of these individuals in that 65 plus population in the labor force is going to be vital for a productive economy.
Yeah, the baby boom generation retirement thing, we're really right in the middle of that right now, here and everywhere else. So for our neighbors, I noticed you had really rapid projected growth for Douglas County. What's driving that?
Yeah, so most counties had a lower projections this year than previous years. And Douglas County was one of the few that actually had an increased population projections compared to what we had previous years. And while Colorado has been uncharacteristically held up by this international migration that I mentioned before over the past couple of years, some counties have continued to be held up by domestic migration. And for these counties, we expect their migration streams to be more robust to some of the declines that we're expecting in the next few years, and migration to persist. Douglas County is one of those counties, and that's why we see higher projections for this county compared to the surrounding counties. In addition to this, Douglas County is also relatively young, so has higher contributions to population growth by higher births and lower deaths compared to other counties.
All right, interesting. And then I also noticed that the projections for Teller and Pueblo County are somewhat slower than for El Paso County. What's going on there?
Yeah, so an interesting story for these. Both of these counties had really slow housing growth through the 2010s that have had lasting impacts on population growth that even persist post-2020. And although we had seen housing production start to pick up post-2020, it again has slowed as housing construction costs have been on the rise. Both of these counties are also have seen smaller contributions from natural change being the population growth that can be attributed to more births than deaths compared to the state overall. And this is due to the fact that both of these counties are considerably older than the state as a whole, and that age factor is going to have a big contribution on speed of growth for those counties.
Interesting. All right. Well, I really appreciate the work that you and your colleagues at the State Demography Office do. I always find these projections and your estimates really fascinating. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here. And if you or anyone watching this video has follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to our office at any time.
All right. Thanks, Neal. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to everybody for watching.